You're listening to Scary Sleep Stories presents The Dark Hours.
Welcome, guys. I know a lot of you use these stories to fall asleep. So before you drift off, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and comment what time it is right now. Let's see who's still awake and who's not alone tonight. Let's begin. Story 1. The House That Grows Silence. Mara had always believed in the weight of history, in the way old buildings held secrets, in how certain rooms seemed to remember. When she inherited the house on Wicker's Hollow, it wasn't the crumbling brick facade or the knot of brambles clinging to the gate that unnerved her. It was the hush that spread through every stone and rafter, a silence so deep it pricked her skin. Her aunt, who passed at the age of 96, left all her belongings to Mara. The legal documents listed the property with its odd stipulation: the house must remain occupied. Silence must never be allowed to grow. Most dismissed it as the poetic dying wish of a woman whose mind had frayed in her last years. Mara, living alone after a drawn-out breakup and on the verge of finishing her university thesis on regional folklore, saw it as an adventure, a fresh start, a space to heal and work. The first time she turned the key in the lock, the wind at her back as dusk pooled in the sky. Mara felt the weight of quiet. The door's creak echoed off high ceilings. The thick scent of dust and lavender greeted her nose. She stepped over the threshold and, in that moment, silence seemed to bloom at her feet, the way fungi spread at the roots of dead trees. The house itself was sprawling, a 3-story Victorian with a wraparound porch sunken in weeds, brass fittings dulled by time, staircases that groaned beneath their own memories. The furniture was all original, couches thin and high-backed, tables pitted and scratched. Books, hundreds, were stacked everywhere, on window seats, in cabinets, on the floors and corners where sunlight dared not linger. It was the quiet that unsettled her most. Not mere absence of sound, but a feeling as if sound itself was being absorbed, swallowed by the house's bones. Her first night, Mara read in bed as the wind battered the shutters. The usual city noises, sirens, distant laughter, the hum of cars were absent here. Only the ticking of a grandfather clock marked time, each tick and tock swallowed hungrily, as if eaten by the walls. She stuck on a playlist of old rock songs, but the music sounded thin, diminished, as if the notes struggled to find space. "I just need to get used to it," she told herself, shuddering. "It's just a matter of time." In the morning, Mara explored. The kitchen waited in orderly disuse. A faded cookbook open on the counter, a teapot unwashed. The back door jammed, and beyond it, the garden rotted under wild lilacs and waist-high grass. Upstairs, spare bedrooms held warped mirrors and wardrobes stuffed with moth-eaten clothing. The attic was locked tight, and the key nowhere to be found. She set about cleaning, humming aimlessly, running the vacuum. The machine sound felt wrong, tinny, strangled before it filled the space. She called a friend on speakerphone and found herself increasing the volume again and again. Her friend's words grew weak, oddly far away, until they cut out altogether. Mara's thesis awaited her hours of transcribing interviews, weaving local stories into a coherent tale. She tried to record voice memos, but the playback was plagued by static. Words twisted and dropped. At night, the dreams began. In the first, Mara found herself walking endless corridors that twisted impossibly, a maze that grew darker and narrower with each turn. Walls pressed close, and shadows crowded just out of sight. She tried to shout but made no sound. Her own voice was gone, sucked dry by the dream. The next morning, as Mara ate breakfast in the kitchen, she found a handwritten note tucked under the salt box. The paper was old, the writing familiar, her aunt's tall looping script. "Do not let the silence grow, child. Speak often. Sing loudly. Make music in every room. When quiet settles, it roots and feeds and remembers." Mara's heart raced. She tried to dismiss it, a note written years earlier, found by chance. But a draft chilled her spine. She opened her laptop to search the house's address. Records emerged. Sales dating back 170 years. Strange newspaper clippings. Rumors of the house that grows silence in local ghost tours and children's rhymes. Hush now. The house will hear. Stillness feeds it, year by year. Don't let quiet linger slow, or silence grows and grows and grows. Determined not to be unsettled by nursery rhymes, Mara began keeping music playing at all times, radio in the kitchen, podcasts in the bath, YouTube concerts in the living room. She spoke aloud to herself, narrated everything, read snippets of poetry at random. Days passed. The house's mood seemed to lighten. The air felt less thick. Mara's nerves settled. When she called friends, their voices came through clearer. Laughter bounced off the walls. She invited old classmates over board game nights, movie marathons, potlucks. The old house shivered with conversation. For a time, Mara let herself believe the stories were childish fears. But then, things changed again. The first incident was small. Her friend Diego, while over for a pizza night, paused mid-story and frowned. "Do you hear that?" "What?" Mara glanced at the speakers, where jazz crooned softly. "It's just nothing. Like your house is sucking all the sound up. Creeps me out." A week later, Mara noticed music would occasionally fade for no reason. She replaced speakers. She bought a new laptop. The problem persisted. She tried clapping in each room. In some, her hands sounded muffled. Claps almost erased. At dusk, she walked the halls, singing. In certain upstairs rooms, her voice vanished the moment she passed the threshold, as if invisible curtains sucked every note away. One morning, Mara awoke to find the words "grows best in stillness" scratched into the dusty bathroom mirror. She blamed her imagination, sleepwalking, perhaps a prank by a friend. But then, things escalated. A book fell from a high shelf as she passed. Its title, "Silence is an Invitation." The radio flicked itself off repeatedly. Calls would drop if Mara sat in 3 particular places, 2 upstairs, 1 near the attic stairs. Friends stopped visiting, too busy, or else, "Your place gives me the willies, sorry." The house, Mara realized, wanted to be quiet. She fought back, shouting poems into corners, leaving a television on in every room. She began recording voice memos, narrating her life for the house's benefit. "Good morning, house. Today I'm making coffee. Today I'm playing music. Today I won't let quiet grow." For a while, it worked. Yet the effort exhausted her, sapped her of motivation. The silence pressed thicker each evening, returning even faster when the sun set. Her own thoughts seemed to echo back, warped by the hush. And then, Mara found the diary. She was dusting the old wardrobe when the false bottom slid away, revealing a battered notebook. The cover was cracked, the edges burnt. Inside, her aunt wrote, "Since John died, the house grows hungry. I sing, but the quiet eats more each day. In 1973, my sister kept silent for a night in the north room and the vines climbed under her door. In 1986, a summer girl went days without humming, her windows clouded with frost in July. Silence is a mold in this place. It blooms, suffocates with memory. My advice, fill every gap." Mara reread the diary 3 times. That night, she set up cameras and kept them rolling in every hallway, determined to document the phenomenon. She left microphones in known quiet spots, hoping to catch the precise moment sound faltered. Reviewing the footage, she saw oddities, moments where footage skipped, as if time drooped. Microphones caught dull static as though the house exhaled. Occasionally, a shadow crossed the hallways, a ripple, as if cloth slid over the lens. Nothing conclusive. Yet the feeling lingered, deeper with every day. One evening, desperate and lonely, Mara called her mother. "Mara, baby, get out if you need to," her mom pleaded. "Your aunt and uncle fought about that house for years. Some say it was built on an old church's remains. Others that the first owner was a recluse who swore silence brought him peace. Now I'm not one for ghosts, but take care of yourself." Mara paced the garden as she listened, her voice loud and purposeful. She stomped in the weeds, sang loudly, told the house, "I am not afraid." The trees seemed to hush her. For a split second, the wind stilled, and Mara thought she caught a figure in an upstairs window, a pale face watching. The weeks grew heavy. Silence loomed, creeping earlier and earlier each afternoon. No amount of sound could hold it back for long. The effort wore at Mara's mind. She slept poorly. Her dreams returned. Rooms narrowing, hands pressing against walls, words lost in echo. The mailman dropped a letter, an official envelope addressed from a Society for Resilient Dwellings. Inside, a single card read, "If you require advice or shelter, dial 1934 and do not speak. The house will listen." Chilled to her bones, Mara followed the instructions. She found the old rotary phone, dialed the number, and sat in silence. At first, nothing happened. Then, a deep trembling surged underfoot. A rumbling she felt more than heard. The phone buzzed once, twice, and then a gentle voice, her aunt's, unmistakably hers, whispered, "Hush not, child. Tell the house your story." Sobbing, Mara poured out her entire tale, her memories, her heartbreak, her longing to heal and belong. The house vibrated gently, the windows humming. Her voice swelled, doubled by unseen echoes, until suddenly the phone went dead, and the hush snapped back, heavier than ever. That night, Mara barricaded herself in the living room. She set every alarm in the house, watches, phones, ovens, radios. She wrote word after word onto slips of paper, jokes, lullabies, prayers, secrets. She scattered them across every room, under every pillow, in the drawers of every bureau. The silence pressed warily against the cacophony. The clocks roared, bells clanging, Alarms ringing, voices babbling from podcasts and audiobooks. Mara felt the walls tremble. She sang until her voice cracked, screamed into pillows, tore up carpets while shouting, "Here I am! Here I am!" The battle crested at midnight. A cold fell over the house, the kind that sinks into venturesome hearts. The hush crept in regardless of sound. Alarms went dead. Batteries died. Speakers fizzed and melted into unresponsive plastic. Even her own lungs struggled to move, as if breath itself threatened to be swallowed whole. Mara fought. She sang, chanted, stamped her feet, named every friend, every hope, every loss. Light, bulbs popped, clocks stopped. For a surreal moment, all memory of language failed. Her screams fell, silent, swallowed by blackness. In that moment, Mara remembered her aunt's last lesson. When quiet settles, it roots and feeds and remembers. She recalled every story she had ever heard, tales told by her mother, ghost stories passed down by neighbors, urban legends, her own dreams, and nightmares. She spoke them all, one by one, into the thick darkness, not caring if sense or sequence held, until finally, something inside her cracked. She fell to her knees, exhausted, and the hush shattered. It wasn't a dramatic event, no burst of light, no release of pent-up explosions. Instead, the air slowly returned. The alarms buzzed weakly, radios flickered. Her own gasping sobs washed the quiet away. Through her tears, Mara heard voices overlapping her aunt, her own child self, friends living and dead. Every story, every memory, every echo came back and filled the room. Dawn arrived with birdsong, thin but hopeful, the kind that promises safety. The hush never returned as fiercely, though it lingered in corners waiting, always hungry. Mara finished her thesis in the living room, narrating it aloud as she typed. She set daily rituals, singing at breakfast, laughter at lunch, poetry at dusk. Friends returned. The house brightened. Silence grew wary, pressed away by sound. But Mara was never careless again. She spoke to the house every day, reminding it and herself that stories and song are life. That quiet is not merely absence, but a living, growing thing. Sometimes on stormy nights, the hush crept closer, eager as ever. Mara would sing into the dark, chant a story, and press play on every device she owned. And in the spaces between sound and pause, she sensed gratitude, a house at ease, fed on voices, content. Because some homes do remember, some silences do grow, but stories, when told bravely, always keep the dark at bay. Story 2. The night the signal returned. Tom Dalton was not the type to believe in urban legends. He lived by numbers, signal strength, and firmware updates. Yet, crouched under the flickering lights of a remote relay station deep in the Appalachians, he questioned everything he once called certain. When the call came that spring, Tom had been awake for 40 hours straight, troubleshooting the county's failing emergency system. After weeks of wild storms, landslides, and fires, the old rural nodes were crumbling. The network pulsed with gaps, dead patches on digital maps, places where help simply vanished. One relay from the Franklin Ridge region had stopped broadcasting completely. By protocol, someone had to go out, diagnose, and reboot. No one at HQ wanted it. "It's probably a downed line," his supervisor said. "Power's flaky out there, but we need it fixed before the next cell hits." No cell service, no weather alerts. Sheriff said people already started calling it the Silent Bend. Tom agreed. He'd go, just him and the battered old tech van, up the switchback roads and rain, furrowed valleys, to wind through vanished mining villages and carcasses of old farmsteads. The trip wasn't just about the signal. In all honesty, he was running from his own kind of dead-air sleep, walking through divorce, quietly mourning a lost brother, feeling the hard edge of his own company's obsolescence. Out here, alone with the towers and the wild, he felt like he still mattered to someone or something. The land got stranger the deeper he went. Once, Appalachian valleys were thick with cabins and the song of mules. Now, Tom's GPS glitched out amid endless stands of pine, the world narrowing into a tunnel of rain-stained green and gray. The relay hub blinked on a sun-starved hilltop, a small cinder-block shed gridded by a chain-link fence, with its thin steel mast sheared in a recent storm and a squat, square building sagging beside it. He parked by the battered gate and cut the engine. The silence immediately pressed in, thick and alive. Nothing but the wind and, somewhere far off, the staccato bark of crows. The radio, always chatty with ghost static and bits of weather bulletins, croaked to silence. Even his phone, usually able to ring a lifeline from the weakest towers, showed no service. Tom strapped on his work vest, grabbing his tablet and a battered toolbox. The whole installation was supposed to be unmanned, self-sufficient, and quiet, except for the gentle hum of the beacon and the backup generator. Instead, it was as still as sealed stone. The fence gate was open. The padlock lay on the ground, shiny, recently broken. "Raccoons," Tom muttered. But the uncertainty crept in. Raccoons didn't cut locks. He stepped inside. His skin prickled. The air felt wrong, slightly electric, laced with the scent of ozone and something sweet and overripe, as if fruit had turned somewhere in the walls. The relay's door was ajar, swinging in the wind. The beacon lights, which should have blinked a reliable white and green, sparked erratically, skipping sequences, sometimes dying altogether. Tom fished out his flashlight and crept inside. The room was cluttered. Spare batteries stacked like bricks, abandoned crates, the relay blinking in a battered metal case, spiderwebs trembling in every corner. Near the main fuse box, 6 sets of shoe prints marred the drying mud. Big, shuffling, never leaving again. Something had been here. Tom switched on his tablet, started diagnostics. The log showed a wild log of error messages and a corrupted date. April 19, 1970. 9 impossible, as this station was built in 2005. He heard then, layered above the wind, a voice. faint, garbled, but familiar. The looping emergency test pattern he'd grown up hearing every flying weekend. "It's just old playback," Tom said aloud. "Probably speakers shorting." But as he worked, replacing fuses and grounding wires, the voice thickened in the static until he recognized words slipping between the static, warped with age. "This is a civil emergency message for Franklin Ridge. If you are receiving this, remain indoors. Do not answer knocking. Do not." The feed broke. Another voice answered, whispery and childlike, somewhere behind the failing transmitters. "They're here. We're below the floor. Don't let it in. Don't let it in." Tom froze. There'd been old rumors, reports about a disaster in the 70s, a landslide that swallowed a mining camp, a lost bus full of children no one spoke much about. Yet to hear a broadcast like this on a dead relay, torn from an impossible year, rattled every bone in his body. He checked the logs. The system reported new connections. Not HQ or dispatch, but a string of old call signs. Call signs Tom hadn't heard since he was a boy. Every minute, 8 signals flashed and died. Y5, read hand, Pi3 arse, and lastly, oddest of all, Tom's own call sign when he held a Bayesian Spreven 20/end, shortwave license. Years ago, he typed into the console, "Who is this?" and set it to broadcast locally. A minute later, in the hush, the station spoke back using the old robot voice. "Welcome." The lights flickered. A power surge spat across his fingertips. Tom yanked his hand away in pain. The backup generator kicked on unbidden. All doors thudded shut. The usual hum became a low throbbing, a heartbeat stuck inside the relay's walls. From the far side of the room, a voice whispered, "Down here." It sounded like a child, rough from disuse, coming from somewhere below. Tom spotted a warped floor hatch, the sort usually reserved for cable runs. He should have called for backup or run. Instead, pulled by a mix of curiosity and creeping dread, he opened the hatch and pointed his flashlight into the blackness. He saw steps descending into a crawl space. More stone than poured concrete, old and not on any blueprints. Walls twined with cables, strange mildew, and the remnants of what looked like an old shortwave rig, the kind used decades before. Parts rusted into the earth. In the muck, he saw old toys, a plastic fire truck, a paper doll, a wooden sheriff's badge half buried, each stained edges blurring into mud. Closer to the far wall, he found 8 footprints lingering in the wet, small, child-sized, going in every direction. Then the radio in his vest hissed, alive without warning. "Do not answer knocking. If you answer, you're already with them." A thud echoed above. Heavy, measured 3 sharp raps, as if someone tested the hatch. Tom killed his light. In the utter dark, the room above scuffed with slow steps, a child's murmur, a voice singing a broken lullaby. "See the signal, see the way. In the dark, you're led astray." He pressed himself to the earth, heart rammed in his chest, breathing shallow. He wanted to believe it was a prank, that wayward teenagers had rigged the relay, that local wildlife could mimic song. But then he remembered something. During the last big storm, a lightning strike took out Franklin. Ridge's power for days. Several families reported seeing children under their porches, barefoot, calling for help. When the storm cleared, no children were missing. But strange chalk marks, handprints, and odd decayed toys appeared in every yard on the lost side of the ridge. Someone or something had come out of the dark and left again. A phone in the relay briefcase rang. It was an old rotary receiver, not plugged in, useless, decorative, yet ringing. The sound was deadened, as if underwater. He lifted the handset. Static. Then his own voice, his 8-year-old self, calling CQ on a shortwave years ago, clear as memory. Is anybody out there? Something shifted in the shadows beyond the crawlspace wall. The children's voices rose, overlapping, as if crouched together in a tight circle. "Welcome, Tom. Show us the way home." He thought of the error logs, the strange call signs, the radio voices from a year nobody should remember. Slowly, the truth settled. This dead relay, this forgotten hill, had caught something in its current that wasn't ever meant to leave. A final surge rattled every bulb. The generator shrieked. Tom scrambled up the steps, slamming the hatch, barely able to lock it as the weight of small fists pounded against the wood in a pattern. 3, then 8, then 1. All systems went black. He stumbled into the evening light, gasping, ankle twisted, radio heavy on his belt. Through the open fence, the mist rolled in, thick as cotton. He drove fast, never looking back. All devices lay silent. His phone forever stuck on searching. Back in town, no one believed his story, of course. Just a half legend, another failing technician's breakdown. But months later, when new tech crews finally returned, the relay was gone. Foundation cracked, cables fused to black glass, as if struck by more than just lightning. Yet during certain storms, when the wind screamed over the empty ridge, residents heard a strange static on radios, interrupted by a long-defunct emergency signal, and then children's voices through the thunder, still here, waiting to answer, "Don't let us in." Tom eventually retired, sealed his radios in boxes, and left town for good. But some nights, when thunder rattles the valley and the lights flicker, he remembers the way the dark, the underworld of silence and signal, always waits beneath the hum of the living world, and that the past, however buried, always knows your frequency. He never answered another call from the ridge. Sometimes, in dreams, he heard children knocking, and he remembered the warning: if you answer, you are already with them. Story 3. The Harvest Masks. Every autumn, the fields outside of Lornside Village burned gold beneath an ever-thickening sky. Locals said that as harvest ended, the land seemed to exhale, and something old, almost sentient, crept through the buckwheat stubble and broken corn. There was a reason why nobody traveled the buckwheat stubble. Back roads, after dusk, why shades were drawn, and why children were told stories of the watchers who come when the wind turns cold. Nadia had always dismissed these warnings as old country superstitions. She was a scientist, not a believer. Raised in the city, her connection to Lornside was paper thin, a single summer spent with her grandmother as a child. And now, the keys to the old family farmhouse thrust into her hands. After the woman's funeral, she returned for a dozen practical reasons: to settle affairs, to sort the possessions, to prepare the house for sale. She had no intention of staying, but upon arrival, she found herself uneasy. The village looked as she remembered stone-faced and silent, shadowed porches, gardens left wild and brambly. At the local grocer, the checker greeted her by name with an unreadable stare. "Staying through the turning?" the woman asked. Nadia hesitated. Before muttering a vague yes, she couldn't explain the shiver that gripped her spine as the woman smiled and said, "You'll see things then." The farmhouse welcomed her with that peculiar emptiness which only the dead can leave behind. Half-washed teacups, an unfinished letter on the kitchen table, the scent of liniment and old coins. Above the hearth, her grandmother's collection of harvest masks hung from pegs, wooden, gnarled, sometimes beautiful, but all unsettling in their exaggerated features, cheekbones sharp as knives, mouths frozen in lines between scream and song, and eyes hollowed as if darkness itself stared through them. Nadia had always hated the masks, but now felt duty-bound to inventory each one. Every mask told a story in her grandmother's looping script, recorded in a cracked old notebook she'd found shoved behind the stove. The Miller's Bride for Rain, worn under new moon. The reciter keeps blight at bay, placed at every field's edge. The bleeding mouth burnt in the final bonfire before winter, never worn by kin. The entries blurred together, half ritual, half warning. By the second night, the wind changed. Leaves turned and danced down country lanes, and a mist rose from the river flats. On instinct, Nadia double-checked every lock, whispering curses at her. Jumpiness. As darkness crowded the windows, something about the house felt shifted thicker, as if waiting. She told herself she'd stay for just a few more days to finish the chores. At twilight, a knock sounded on the side door. She froze. Then a second, gentle but insistent, she peered out. 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, faces half lit, clutching tightly together, waited on the stoop. "Please, may we have the reciter's face?" the eldest girl asked in a flat, rehearsed tone. Nadia blinked. "Excuse me?" "The mask for blight," said the middle child, eyes wide and star-bright. "Arda said to fetch the one that sings, to keep the fields safe tonight." The third, silent and shaking, squeezed a cloth doll. Nadia almost laughed, but the children's expressions were unblinking, too serious. She fetched the reciter's mask from the row of wooden visages and handed it over. "We'll bring it back before sunrise," the eldest girl promised. And before Nadia could reply, they fled up the lane. That night, sleep did not come easy. Nadia's dreams pitched and rolled old songs in strange tongues. A shadow circling the hedgerows. She swore she heard drums in the layered hush outside, the cry of something between laughter and mourning. She woke, heart pounding, to a tap on the window. At dawn, the reciter's mask grinned on the porch rail, flecked with mud and thumbprints. The pattern continued, Each evening, masked children visited, each night another of her. Grandmother's artifacts borrowed for their turning. Each morning the mask returned with offerings. Apples, dried corn tied in red yarn, bundles of wild sage. Nadia, unsettled, tried to press answers from the villagers, but was met only with knowing, mournful smiles. Midweek, Nadia walked the fields at sunset as villagers set torches at their borders, balancing effigies on every fence post. At the crossroads, she stumbled upon a cluster of elders in thick, stitched muslin cloaks, adjusting one of the masks upon a crude straw figure. Their complicated murmurs fell silent as she approached. "You should not watch the burning, Nadia," one whispered, the old butcher she faintly recalled from her childhood. "Why the masks?" she challenged, trying to keep her voice steady. "They protect us through the turn," the butcher said. "The veil's thin. By our wear and their watching, the old ones pass us by." "You remember the stories, yes?" "I remember stories. I don't believe them." He looked at her, something like pity in his gaze. "Belief isn't required, only respect." That night, the last of the turning, the villagers gathered in the meadow for the burning. Nadia found herself drawn to the town's edge. The scene was eerily beautiful. Masked villagers, faces aglow with firelight, sang in low braided harmonies before a towering effigy dressed in all the borrowed visages. The singing built in waves until, with a sudden silence, the eldest laid a torch to the pyre. Something changed in that hush. The flames licked high. For a split heartbeat, the mask seemed to smile, to shudder. Nadia swore. She saw what looked like eyes moving within the hollow sockets, mouths widening and then collapsing as flames consumed wood and cloth alike. The crowd did not flinch, did not back away. Instead, they bowed their heads. The burning stretched into the small hours. When only embers remained and masks charred, the villagers filed away. Nadia lingered, chest tight, mind racing, with images she could not explain. She explored the circle's aftermath as dawn colored the world gray and pink. Beneath the ashes, she found an impossible thing. A mask, untouched by flame, set dead center. This was not one of her grandmother's. It was slate black, polished, and utterly smooth, almost reflective. Picking it up, she felt static crawl across her palms. A faint old voice whispered in a language she couldn't name. Nadia staggered, vision swimming not with fear, but with memory. Stories pressing against her temples as if whole lifetimes crowded to be remembered. Visions flooded her. Generations of villagers in ritual, each one donning the mask, each one protected by its wearing. She felt the wild, ageless hunger of the things kept at bay, shapes in fog, faces pressed against glass, longing for entrance. She smelled winter on the air, the sweetness of blood and ash. Heard her grandmother's voice say, "We do this because we must, not because we wish to." Nadia jerked awake sunup, mask in her lap, memory of fire on her tongue. Afterward, the town changed. Faces grew less guarded. Children smiled, unmasked, waving as she passed. That night, the woods themselves seemed still. kept at bay by invisible boundaries. Nadia packed her things to leave, but faltered as the black mask caught sunlight on her desk. Reluctantly, she tucked it into a suitcase. Before she left, she visited her grandmother's grave. Flowers withered nearby, but the ground beneath her marker was lush and untrodden. "I see now," she whispered, "why you stayed, why you wore the mask and sang the old songs. I thought this village was lost to folklore, but it lives by what it remembers and what it guards." Days later, back in the city, the black mask waited on her mantle, untouched but not forgotten. That autumn, when the air sharpened, she caught herself humming a foreign song, lighting a candle at dusk. Nadia never told another soul about Lornside's turning or the things she'd seen. But each year, as frost crept under her windowsills and the world seemed to pause, she'd find herself wondering what old hunger pressed its face to the glass, and she'd put on the mask and whisper a song for the harvest, for the dead, and for the living, for the watchers who wait in the cold. Some traditions, she realized, persist not by belief, but by memory and by inherited respect for the shadows that always come when the harvest ends. You've been listening to Scary Sleep Stories. May your dreams be calm and your night undisturbed.